There is a moment in Hunter x Hunter when the most powerful character in the story asks a blind girl a simple question: "What is my name?" And strangely, it's one of the most human moments in the entire series, because the character asking that question wasn't human at all. He was born to rule, born to dominate, born to see humanity as nothing more than livestock. His name was Meruem, and when he first entered the world, there was no hint of compassion in him, only certainty. Certainty that he was superior to every living being. Certainty that strength alone defined value. And certainty that humanity existed only to serve a higher species. From the moment Meruem was born, the message was clear. He was the king of the Chimera Ants, the pinnacle of evolution, a creature designed to surpass humans in every imaginable way. But what made Meruem truly terrifying wasn't just his strength, it was his worldview. Because unlike many villains in anime, Meruem wasn't driven by revenge. He wasn't broken by trauma. He wasn't trying to prove himself to anyone. He simply believed something very simple: that the strong have the right to rule over the weak. And in his mind, humans were weak, disposable, replaceable. Food. When Meruem first encounters humans, he doesn't see individuals. He sees categories: useful humans, useless humans. The talented may live. The rest are nothing more than nourishment. It's a brutally cold philosophy. But what makes it unsettling is that Meruem doesn't see himself as evil. From his perspective, this is simply the natural order of the world. Strength determines worth, power determines survival. It's the same logic humanity has followed for centuries, just taken to its most extreme conclusion. And that's what makes Meruem such a fascinating antagonist. Because in the beginning, he isn't just a monster. He's the embodiment of pure, unapologetic dominance. He has no interest in understanding humans, no curiosity about their emotions, no reason to question his place at the top of the food chain. The king does not question the kingdom. He commands it, and the royal guards follow him with absolute devotion. They worship him, protect him, serve him as if he were a living god, because to them, he is perfection, the ultimate life form. But perfection has a strange weakness. It leaves no room for change. And that's where the story of Meruem becomes something far more interesting than a simple battle between heroes and villains. Because the greatest threat to Meruem was never humanity's strength. It was something far more dangerous, something he never expected to encounter. Not an enemy, not a warrior, not even a hunter, but a fragile, blind girl sitting quietly in a room, waiting for someone to play a game. And that's where the king's story truly begins. When Meruem first sits down to play Komugi, he isn't looking for meaning. He isn't searching for understanding. He's simply looking for proof. Proof that humans truly are inferior. Because in Meruem's mind, superiority must exist in every domain. Not just strength, not just intelligence, but in games, strategy, logic. The king expects to win, effortlessly. After all, how could a human possibly defeat a being who was born perfect? But the opponent placed in front of him is not what he expected. She isn't a warrior. She isn't confident. She doesn't even look at him. The girl across the board is small, frail, and blind. Her name is Komugi, and at first glance she seems completely insignificant. Meruem asked for the strongest players in every human game, and yet the one who arrives before him is someone who looks as though the wind itself could break her. But when the match begins, something unexpected happens. Meruem loses, not once, not twice, but again, and again, and again. The king of the Chimera Ants, a creature who believed himself to be perfect, cannot defeat a fragile human girl at a board game. For the first time since his birth, Meruem encounters something he cannot dominate, and it unsettles him, because Komugi doesn't win through arrogance. She doesn't taunt him. She doesn't celebrate her victories. She simply plays, quietly, calmly, as if nothing else in the world matters except the board in front of her. Even when she realizes she's sitting across from the most terrifying being on the planet, she shows no fear. Not because she is brave, but because she is completely devoted to the game. For Komugi, Komugi is not just a competition, it is her entire existence. She has no wealth, no status, no power. Her entire worth as a person has always been tied to one thing, her ability to play, and she believes something deeply. If she ever loses, her life will have no meaning. So every match she plays is a matter of survival. Every move carries the weight of her identity. And strangely, this is something Meruem begins to notice. Because for the first time, he sees a human whose value cannot be measured by strength. Komugi has no physical power. She cannot fight. She cannot defend herself. And yet she possesses something Meruem has never encountered before, an unbreakable sense of purpose. She does not fear death. She fears losing the thing that gives her life meaning. And slowly, without realizing it, Meruem becomes fascinated by her. Not as prey, not as a subject, but as something he cannot fully understand. Because every time the king sits down to play, he expects to learn something new, a pattern, a weakness, a flaw he can exploit. But Komugi never breaks, and the more he loses, the more the king begins to question something he had never questioned before. If strength defines worth, then how can someone so fragile defeat him so completely? For the first time since his birth, Meruem begins to experience something unfamiliar. Not anger, not pride, but curiosity. And curiosity is the first crack in perfection. At first, Meruem continues playing gungi for one simple reason. He wants to win. To him, defeat is unacceptable. Perfection should not lose to imperfection. So every match becomes another attempt to prove the same idea he has believed since birth, that he is superior. But something strange begins to happen the more time he spends with Komugi. The king who once saw humans as livestock starts asking questions, not about strategy, but about her. He asks her why she plays the way she does, why she devotes her entire life to a single game, why someone so weak would risk everything just to sit across from him again and again. And Komugi answers with complete honesty, because to her, gungi is everything. It is the only thing she can do, the only thing that gives her life meaning. If she loses, she has nothing left. And strangely, Meruem begins to respect that. This is something entirely new for him. Respect for a human, not because of power, but because of conviction. Komugi has no strength, no authority, no status, and yet she possesses something the king himself does not fully understand: purpose. While Meruem was born with power, Komugi earned her identity through devotion, and that difference begins to change the way the king sees the world. For the first time, he begins to notice something about humanity that he ignored before. Not all humans are the same. Some are brilliant, some are weak, some create, some destroy. Some dedicate their lives to meaningless things, and others dedicate their lives to something greater than themselves. The simple categories he once used to define humanity begin to collapse. Useful, useless, food. These ideas start to feel incomplete, but the transformation isn't sudden, it's subtle, almost invisible at first. It appears in small moments. Moments where the king hesitates. Moments where he listens instead of commands. Moments where he chooses to protect Komugi rather than discard her. When Komugi is injured during the palace invasion, something extraordinary happens. Meruem does not see a disposable human. He sees someone important, someone he does not want to lose. And for the first time in the story, the king makes a decision that has nothing to do with domination. He chooses compassion. He orders his royal guards to save her life, not because she is useful to his kingdom, but because she matters to him. This is the moment where Meruem truly begins to change. The creature who was born believing that power defines worth is slowly learning something different, that a person's value cannot always be measured by strength. And ironically, the king of the Chimera Ants begins discovering something humanity itself often forgets, that what makes life meaningful is not power, but connection. However, the tragedy of Meruem's story is that this realization comes far too late, because while the king is beginning to understand humanity, humanity has already decided that he must die. While Meruem was slowly discovering something about humanity, humanity had already made its decision about him. To the world of hunters, the Chimera Ant King was not a being capable of change. He was a catastrophe, an existential threat. something that had to be eliminated before it could reshape the balance of the world. And the man chosen to stop him understood that better than anyone. Isaac Netero, the chairman of the Hunter Association, a man who had spent his entire life pursuing strength. Their battle was never just about power, it was about two philosophies colliding. Meruem believed that strength justified rule, but Netero believed something far darker, that humanity would use any means necessary to survive, even if it meant becoming monstrous themselves. During the battle, Meruem continues trying to understand humans. He asks Netero questions. He tries to learn the name he had forgotten, because after all the matches with Komugi, something inside him had changed. The king no longer saw himself simply as a ruler. He wanted to understand the world he intended to govern. But Netero had no interest in conversation, because he had already accepted something Meruem had not yet realized, that humanity's greatest weapon was not strength, it was desperation. And when Netero finally activates the miniature rose, the truth becomes clear. Meruem was born as the pinnacle of evolution, a being far stronger than any human. And yet, in the end, he was defeated by a weapon born from humanity's darkest instincts. Not martial arts, not strategy, but a bomb. A small, cruel device designed to wipe out entire populations. It was a moment of brutal irony. The monster had begun learning compassion, while humanity resorted to annihilation. But the most powerful part of Meruem's story doesn't happen during the battle. It happens afterward, when the king returns to the palace, poisoned, dying. And instead of searching for revenge, instead of seeking domination, Meruem asks for only one thing: Komugi, the girl who defeated him countless times, the girl who unknowingly taught him what it meant to value another life. And as the poison slowly takes his strength away, the two of them sit together one final time, not as king and subject, not as monster and human, but simply as two people sharing a moment. They play Gungi, the same game that once challenged Meruem's pride. But this time, the king is no longer trying to win. He just wants to stay with her, for as long as he can, until the end. In the final moments of his life, Meruem asks Komugi a question that reveals just how far he has come. He asks if she will stay with him, even if it means dying, and Komugi answers without hesitation, yes, because to her, sitting across from the king is exactly where she belongs. And so the monster who was born to rule the world spends his final moments quietly playing a board game with the only person who ever treated him as something more than a king. Meruem began his life as the most terrifying creature in the world, but in the end, he died as something far more rare, a monster who learned how to be human. Most villains in anime are remembered for their power, their battles, their destruction. But Meruem is remembered for something far more unusual: his change. Because when the Chimera Ant King was born, he represented the worst possible future for humanity. A perfect predator, a ruler who believed that strength alone gave him the right to decide who deserved to live. And for a long time, he was right. No hunter could match him. No strategy could outplay him. No human could overpower him. But what ultimately defeated Meruem wasn't strength. It was something far more subtle, a simple board game, a fragile girl who had nothing to offer except her dedication, and the quiet realization that life cannot be measured by power alone. What makes Meruem's story unforgettable is the cruel timing of it all. The moment he finally begins to understand humanity is the moment he no longer has time left to live among them. The king who was born believing humans were beneath him dies holding the hand of one, and in that final moment, the story quietly flips everything we thought we knew. The monster learned compassion, the humans chose annihilation. And somewhere in between those two extremes lies the uncomfortable truth that Hunter x Hunter has always been trying to show us: that humanity is not defined by what we are born as, but by the choices we make before the end. And in the end, the Chimera Ant King, the creature who was never meant to be human, may have understood that better than anyone else.